Alibaba.com is one of the world's largest B2B e-commerce platforms. It connects you to millions of business buyers around the world. When you sell on Alibaba.com, you can digitize your catalog, meet your customers, promote your products, and grow your business. Having a robust product catalog online is fundamental for sellers to drive sales on e-commerce platforms. Posting on Alibaba.com is simple. You select the category, write a title and description, and add pictures and video to demonstrate the product. You can configure ladder pricing and minimum order quantity in the pricing module so that you can optimize every sale. Or you can leave it up to the intelligent posting tool to offer algorithm-based suggestions for your products. You also get data insights and optimization tools to make your postings more compelling. You get your own storefront to brand your business or show featured products, production capacity, and more. And don't worry about language barriers. Alibaba.com provides a powerful translation tool so that you can easily sell to a global buyer base. Millions of business buyers around the world come to Alibaba.com daily to source products. When you sell on Alibaba.com, you get to interact with your customers and own the relationship. Buyers who are interested in your products would send you inquiries. You'll then be notified immediately in My Alibaba Message Center and Ali Supplier mobile app. Alibaba Real-Time Translation function helps you communicate with global buyers with no barrier. Buyers on Alibaba.com can also send open inquiries in Request for Quotations (RFQ) Center, asking for sellers who can supply what they're looking for. It's your chance to proactively build business connections. Alibaba.com offers an all-in-one customer management tool. You can follow up with leads, manage business contacts, and build a global customer base. To scale your sales, Alibaba.com offers many marketing tools. One way to promote your products is with a product showcase. Showcased products will appear first on your homepage and also receive priority in product ranking. To expand your reach or to target buyers from specific regions, you can lean on the keyword advertising tool. Select the products to promote, set a target audience or retargeting group, and input your ad budget. Your products will then be promoted to your desired customers, and you only pay when they work. Alibaba.com helps you grow your business in a digital way. As a seller, you'll get a star rating, which help indicate how optimized your business is on the platform and rewards you with more exposure. Your analytics dashboard helps you measure the success of your storefront and product performance. Analytics dashboard. It provides data and analytics to help you optimize every part of your Alibaba.com account. And don't forget, you can always find training materials in the Global Seller Academy, Help Center, or reach out to your customer service team anytime. Alibaba.com helps you grow your business online and reach millions of business buyers around the world. Start selling on Alibaba.com today.
Hi everyone, my name is Samara Swenson. I'm a marketing manager here at Alibaba.com, and I'm happy to present this week's episode that's Brand Armor, Mastering IP Protection on Alibaba.com. As you all know, or maybe a few of you don't know, Alibaba.com is the leading B2B marketplace, and we've been recognized by Forbes on 8 consecutive times. So if you're looking to do B2B business, if you're looking to sell products, to find B2B buyers, Alibaba.com is the place for you to be selling all your products. And yeah, so I want to invite everyone to follow us on our social media channels, Alibaba.com USA Sellers. We have a Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram page. So go ahead and follow us on there. Make sure you're following so you can stay up to date on all the news that's happening on Alibaba.com on the seller side. And as well, I want to invite you to check out our website, us.alibaba.com. There you can stay up to date with all the B2B news, the B2B industries. We post a lot of really important industry reports that can help you and your business thrive. So make sure, to stay in contact, check out our website and follow us on all our social media channels. And well, just to Alibaba and the numbers, we have more than 40 million buyers, and all of these are active. On a daily basis, we receive around 10 million buyers that are visiting Alibaba.com, and they're looking to source through suppliers like yourself. So make sure that you are selling on Alibaba.com so you can take advantage of this huge pool of B2B buyers. Another really important feature of Alibaba.com is that we have a presence in more than 200 countries. So it's truly a global platform. We have more than 200,000 suppliers across the globe, not only in China, as that's the question that comes up a lot. We have suppliers all over the world. We have suppliers in Denmark. We have suppliers in Germany, in Belgium, in Italy, in the UK. We have in the US, in Canada, Mexico, Vietnam, India. So we're truly a global platform and we're all over the world. So if you're looking, to find great suppliers, you can do it here. So this is the place that you can start selling on Alibaba.com, okay? And well, now let's go ahead. And so the topic on today's subject is brand armor, mastering IP protection on Alibaba.com. And today I have an expert in this field. His name is Evan Williams. He is a Senior Director of Global Intellectual Property Enforcement Team here at Alibaba.com USA. So I'm going to give it ahead to Evan so you can introduce yourself a little bit. And we can go ahead and get started, Evan.
Thank you so much, Samara. Is my volume okay?
Yeah, your volume's great. Yeah.
Great. Well, listen, so glad to speak with everybody, at least virtually here, and talk about something I'm very proud of, the really robust IP protection programs that we have at Alibaba Group. I am a member of what's called the Global IP Enforcement Team. We are the so-called front-facing IPR team at Alibaba. There are 15, soon to be 16 of us spread around the world. I personally am based in Washington, D.C., but travel all over the world. That's why I'm broadcasting to you from Dubai right now. Our job is to make sure that we're there for rights holders who, even though they may be able to use our highly efficient tools to submit requests for taking down listings when they see infringement, but need to talk to somebody, they can reach out to us. And as I said, I'm one of 16 people spread around the world. So if you remember nothing else, remember that the most important slide in this presentation is the last one because it has my email address. And I absolutely promise you that if you reach out to me, I will respond and you will get a personal human answer to whatever your question is. Next slide, Samar. So I want to talk a little bit about a pretty major event for us last year. We had the largest corporate reorganization in Alibaba's history. Alibaba is a little over 20 years old. And in March of 2023, we split into 6 companies, one of which now specializes in e-commerce. Next slide, please. So these are the 6 companies, and the one which includes e-commerce is, well, there's actually 2 of them. One is the Alibaba International Commerce Group, and the other is the Taobao and Tmall Group. Obviously, we're here today to talk about Alibaba.com, and Alibaba.com falls in the Alibaba International Digital Commerce Group. Next slide, please. So you can see here, these are the 2 e-commerce groups, which now are a part of Alibaba's new corporate structure. And on the right side, you see Alibaba International Digital Commerce Group. Alibaba.com is one of 6 e-commerce platforms in that group. And the basic difference between these 2 companies is that Taobao and Tmall group comprises all of the so-called China-facing platforms, the platforms which are geared primarily to Chinese consumers. And although there are many foreign companies which sell on those platforms, most of what's sent out there doesn't cross borders. The Alibaba International Digital Commerce Group, by contrast, is all international facing platforms, either platforms where most of the sellers in China, but most of the customers are outside China, like AliExpress or Alibaba.com, and also a number of regional platforms. Daraz is one, it covers South Asia. Lazada is another, it covers Southeast Asia. Trendyol is the leading e-commerce site in Turkey, and Moravia is our newest platform. It was launched in Spain, and it is specifically for Spanish sellers to sell primarily to Spanish consumers. I realize again that you're here mostly to hear about Alibaba.com, but just want you to understand the basic way that we set this up. And the reason, one reason that we, once this happened, that we made sure that IPR protection followed suit is that we think this allows us to better serve you when it comes to IPR protection. I'm a part, as I said, of the group which focuses on Alibaba International Digital Commerce Group, and because we're focusing exclusively on international facing platforms, we're able to respond more quickly to international rights holders when they have problems which need to be elevated beyond the, as I said, normally highly efficient automatic mechanisms that we have for you to file complaints. Next slide, please. So, I started off by telling you about everything that's changed in the past year, but in a lot of ways, what's more important is what hasn't changed. And I can tell you above all, what hasn't changed is our deep and robust commitment to IPR protection that was there before the reorganization, and it's there just as strongly after the reorganization. Next slide. So we, for many, many years now, have been talking about our 4 pillars. Notice and takedown is basically the process of receiving complaints from rights holders, deciding whether or not they show that a listing on one of our platforms is infringing, and if so, taking it down very quickly. We have proactive monitoring, which is what we do ourselves, crawling over our own platforms and trying to take down, and successfully taking down, most infringing listings before a sale ever occurs. That means that you don't have to do so much as the rights holder. You don't have to be monitoring our platforms yourself. The third pillar is offline enforcement. That basically means that we care about more than just taking infringing listings down on our platforms. We know that, if that's all we do, a lot of these sellers, at least the dishonest ones, are going to pop right up with a different store, sometimes even using a fake ID. So while we certainly take measures to prevent that, and we think we're pretty efficient at keeping bad sellers from coming back to our stores, we know that the ultimate solution is to go to the source, to find the manufacturing and distribution facilities where the counterfeits are actually produced, so that we can try and stop the supply in the first place. That way they don't have any counterfeits to sell, so they're definitely not going to come back to our platforms or any others. The final pillar is stakeholder collaboration. I've been in this business long enough. I spent almost 20 years as a federal prosecutor in the U.S. prosecuting IP criminals before I came to Alibaba. I've been in this business long enough to know that collaboration is the name of the game, and no one actor, even an actor as global and full of resources as Alibaba, is able to solve this problem itself. We need to work with the stakeholders who own the IP. We need to work with the government agencies which are focused on IP enforcement. And we need to even work with academia, where perhaps one of the most important parts of this lies, trying to educate consumers that IP really matters, and that it's a bad thing for them to buy fakes. So I'm going to talk about each of these in a little bit more detail. Next slide, please. So the primary mechanism for submitting notice and takedown requests, and probably most of you are familiar with that term, but for those of you who are not, basically refers to the process of a rights holder, somebody who owns IP, whether it's trademark, copyright, patent, whatever, giving us notice that there is what they believe to be an infringing listing on one of our platforms. And if we agree, if there is sufficient evidence, because we, of course, have to comply with Chinese and other countries' laws, which require evidence before we can take down a listing. If we find that the claim is valid, then we take down the listing. And normally that process is very, very quick. Normally it happens within 24 hours. But the main vehicle for submitting notice and takedown requests is what we call our IPP platform. That stands for the Intellectual Property Protection Platform, but I'll just call it IPP from now on. Up until March of last year, well, actually up until about fall of last year, we had one IPP platform which served all of our e-commerce platforms, both the China-facing ones and the international-facing ones. But with the reorganization and the division or assignment of the e-commerce platforms to two separate companies, we realized that there was a need for a separate IPP platform for the international facing e-commerce platforms. And so we now have the TTG, that's the Taobao Tmall Group IPP platform, where you go to file notice and takedown requests for the China-facing platforms. And we have a separate one, the Alibaba International IPP platform for the international facing platforms, which of course includes Alibaba.com. So if you wanted to file a notice and takedown file a notice and takedown complaint about an infringing listing that you saw on Alibaba.com, you would go to the Alibaba International IPP platform. And I can certainly follow up with the URLs for both of those, or you can just Google them. The URLs will come up will come up very easily. And it's important to realize that all of these platforms are covered by the two IPP platforms because while you're here to hear about Alibaba.com, your IP can get ripped off on any platform. So while you may be mostly concerned about how you're going to sell on Alibaba.com, you need to be concerned about protecting your IP on all of our platforms and all of the platforms of our competitors. At the end of the day, online protection is something that you have to care about no matter what the platform is. These platforms are the best and quickest way to submit a notice and takedown request. And when I said it was quick, just to give you a sense of how quick, on AliExpress, for instance, our large business to consumer platform, 98% of notice and takedown requests are processed within 24 hours. On Lazada, our Southeast Asia platform, I think it's 94%. Basically, the average for the four platforms which are housed on the Alibaba International IPP platform is 96%. So bottom line, the average takedown time is 24 hours or less for 96% of notice and takedown requests that we receive. It may take you a little time to file the notice, but once you do, we can promise you that you're going to get a quick response. Most of the time it's favorable, but even if it's not, we know that as business people, in order to make smart decisions, in order to make the best decisions, what you need to do is be fully informed and fully informed as quick as possible. So that's why we work so hard to make sure that we get you a quick answer no matter what. Next slide, please. And we understand that not everybody wants to use the IPP portal. We make it as easy as we can. We make registration fairly simple. For instance, when you upload proof of your IP. You only need to do it once when you first set up an account, and then every time you go in to file a notice and takedown request based on that same IP, you can use the IP that you already uploaded. But again, we understand that, for many different reasons, not everybody wants to use the IPP portal. For example, a lot of small and medium-sized enterprises they just don't have that many notice and takedown requests, and so they prefer to simply fill out a form. So we have that option over on the right side there. You can see an online form, and that way you don't have to bother about setting up an account on the IPP portal. Next slide, please. And just want to offer a few practical tips. Don't really expect you to remember these, but just to give you a sense of the kinds of things that especially my team can help you with if you encounter difficulty filing notice and takedown requests, or you manage to file them, but you're not getting the favorable outcomes that you want. Varies a little bit by the type of IP, but, with trademark, we find that, one of the most common errors is that people don't upload the right IP. They don't upload the right trademark, or the trademark doesn't cover the right classes, or the trademark is not for the right jurisdiction. Because unlike other types of IP, with trademarks, the trademark has to be registered somewhere. For our international platforms, we make that pretty easy, even though, for example, AliExpress sells all over the world. So long as you have that trademark registered somewhere internationally, then you can file a claim for trademark infringement. So, for example, even though AliExpress might have a listing which is available all over the world, if you have that trademark registered in the United States, then we'll accept a notice and takedown request based on that trademark registration. For copyright, one of the biggest problems is just that people don't give us adequate evidence of the copyright itself. Copyright, unlike trademark, doesn't have to be registered, and it's global under what's known as the Berne Convention. But we still need some evidence that you own the copyright. And so, for example, one way that you can do that is by giving us the URL of a website where you have photographs posted which you see being used in an infringing manner on one of our platforms. Finally, for filing patent notices, a couple different things that people get tripped up on. For one thing, if you are filing a notice based on a Chinese patent, then you need to give us what's known as an evaluation report. Probably a lot of you don't even have Chinese patents, but for those of you who do, I expect you know what I'm talking about by an evaluation report. Essentially, in China, when they grant patents, they don't do a substantive review the way they do, for instance, in the United States or the UK. In other words, they don't actually examine the thing to see whether it's a unique and new invention. They pretty much just hand out the patent if you fill out the form. So within China, and the highest courts in China have endorsed this practice, what's normally required in addition to a patent is what's called an evaluation report, which is that extra substantive review showing that, in fact, not only was the patent issued, but there was no prior patent for that same thing. So without that evaluation report, we're normally not going to accept a notice and takedown claim. The other thing is if you're filing a claim based on a utility or a model patent, then we normally require a comparison chart where you literally just go through the features of your patent, go through the features that you see on the infringing listing, and show how the features on the infringing listing basically are copies or infringe the features on your listing. Next slide, please. These are our IPR mailboxes, and I apologize when I lean forward, it's because I'm doing this on a phone, and so the screen is very small, and I'm somewhat old, so I need to really squint sometimes to see the tiny little screen. But anyway, the purpose of this slide is just to give you a couple of important email addresses. So, as I said, the IPP portal is definitely the fastest and most efficient way to file notice and takedown requests, but we do have other options. One of them, which I described already, is the online form, which is basically like a fillable PDF form. And the third option is this. You simply write an email. IPR@alibaba-inc.com, or for Lazada, Protect IP. And I can't even read the rest of that, but hopefully you can. Hopefully your screen's a little bit bigger than mine. But the bottom line is you can also just, write to one of these email addresses, explain which listing you're talking about and why it's infringing, and attach to that email whatever proof that you have of your IP. And we will consider that as well, and in many cases issue you a favorable decision based simply on that email. These emails are also helpful because they are kind of for the stuff that doesn't fit in a box. We try to make it easy on the IPP portal, for example, to ask questions if there's something which you're not sure of, but sometimes it's easier just to be able to write it in your own words and not have to fit it in a box, and that's what you can use these email addresses for. As I said, the reason that we encourage people to use the IPP platform is just that it's normally the quickest way. So you remember I was citing those stats before about the very high percentage of notice and takedown requests which are processed within 24 hours if you use the IPP platform. That processing time tends to get a little bit stretched out if you file your notice using one of these email addresses instead. Next slide, please. And these are just some screen prints which give you a little bit more flavor of what you will see on the IPP platform. At the top there, you see a list of the 4 Alibaba International Digital Commerce e-commerce platforms for which you can file notice and takedown requests on the IPP platform. And then screen prints of the user center. It's all pretty intuitive. As I said, we've tried to make it as easy as possible. The basic steps when you go onto the IPP platform, if you're opening up an account, are first of all, providing information about yourself and or your company, which we verify. We do vet these accounts to make sure that sellers are not picking on each other. And then more or less the second thing that you do is provide proof of your IP rights. And then the third thing you do is at that point, you're ready to actually file notice and takedown requests because we have the information we need about you and or your company. And we also have the information that we need about your IP rights. Just one quick note, I know, or you may remember that I mentioned that Alibaba International Digital Commerce Group has, in fact, 6 platforms. So that includes Trendyol, which is in Turkey, and Daraz, which is in South Asia. So far, they have not migrated. They're newer acquisitions of Alibaba Group. So far, they have not migrated onto the IPP platforms. So for those 2 platforms to file notice and takedown requests, normally you write email addresses for those platforms directly. And again, just if I'm not sure any of you have business or are worried about Trendyol and Daraz, but if so, please feel free to follow up with me using the email on the last slide, and I'm happy to provide you with a lot more information. But at the end of the day, the focus of today's conversation is Alibaba.com, so I won't talk more about Trendyol and Daraz. Next slide, please. Just want to talk a little bit about some of the new features of the IPP platforms. We're always trying to make it easier to file notice and takedown requests. So one thing that we're working on is to make it easier, for instance, to complain about somebody who uses your product's name in a storefront. So they're not otherwise infringing, but they're using your name basically to drive traffic to their store where they're selling other products which are not necessarily infringing yours, but at the end of the day, they've still gotten people there by telling them by using your name in their title. A couple of other things here. We now have, for Alibaba International anyway, two foreign language versions. We now our business all the time is growing in Korea, so we now have a version of the platform in Korean, and we also have a version of the platform in Spanish. Next slide, please. All right, let's talk a little bit more about the second pillar, proactive monitoring. At the end of the day, even though e-commerce is one of our many businesses, we're a technology company. And proactive monitoring is perhaps the most direct reflection of that know-how. It's built upon our technology capabilities. We've built different algorithm models for proactive monitoring over the years based on features and knowledge which we've accumulated through long experience. The good thing about the algorithms and increasingly AI are that they learn and they improve over time based on the growing number of notice and takedown requests that we've received and the growing sets of data that we're receiving from rights holders. And once the algorithm identifies an infringing listing, it will automatically remove the recognized infringement right away. And just to give you some sense of how vast this is, on Lazada and AliExpress, we remove 3 times as many listings proactively as we do in response to notice and takedown requests. And most of those listings are removed before a single sale. So, I know that people sometimes complain about the effort involved in filing a notice and takedown request. Please know that we're doing our best to make sure that we keep that to a minimum for you by constantly policing our own platforms and trying to take down as many listings as we can before you ever see them or have to worry about them. And while I'm here to talk about Alibaba and Alibaba.com, I can speak for my sister platforms as well, Amazon, Mercado Libre. That's really the trend of the future. The e-commerce platforms are focusing more and more on proactive monitoring, trying to get smarter and smarter so that, this problem is not something that rights holders have to deal with in the first place. Next slide, please. All right, let's move on to the third pillar. That's offline enforcement. And again, this is basically the idea that we want to do more than just take down infringing listings on our platforms. We want to go after the source. We want to, wherever possible, assist with the dismantling of supply and distribution facilities which are pumping out the counterfeit goods in the first place. So where do these offline cases come from? First of all, we're constantly responding to requests from law enforcement. Obviously, as a company headquartered in Hangzhou, an awful lot of those requests come from Chinese law enforcement, which is highly efficient and highly focused on IPR criminal enforcement. So they are pretty much able to get whatever information they need from us. The nice thing about responding to requests from Chinese law enforcement is that many of the rules which prohibit us from releasing data to foreign law enforcement don't apply when it's Chinese law enforcement. And I think you'd find that that's similar for other e-commerce platforms and other countries. In the United States, Amazon is a lot freer to provide information to U.S. law enforcement than they would be to provide data, especially data about Americans, to Chinese law enforcement. So it works that way on both sides of the pond. So we're constantly doing that. And just to give you an example, last year there were 2,400 100 investigations which we supported and started with a request from Chinese law enforcement. The second way that cases are generated is when brands come to us. This is mostly the larger global brands, although in a few cases we have worked with small and medium-sized enterprises which have come to us with promising leads. At the end of the day, that's because while we can support an offline referral, ultimately the police are the ones who make the choice about whether or not to accept it. And for the most part, not surprisingly, they want to concentrate on the largest cases involving the largest brands. As I said, I was a prosecutor for years in the United States, and it was the same way with us. We didn't have that many resources, so for the most part, we had to focus. On the largest cases and the largest brands. But when brands come to us and say, "Hey, we're going to the Chinese Public Security Bureau with this referral. Do you have information that you can provide to them?" If we do, we will. Now, one thing to understand, we can't necessarily provide that information to you, to the rights holder, but we can provide it to the Chinese police. So if you come to us and you say, if you have data regarding this target, we want you to provide it to the police, we can and we will, but we're not allowed to provide it to you directly. So the police will have everything they need. You just won't get that data from us. Finally, and I think maybe most surprisingly for a lot of people, we actually make proactive leads to law enforcement. In other words, in cases where neither the police have requested information nor has a rights holder come to us with a referral which they plan to make to law enforcement, when we see anomalous data patterns that we think potentially constitute, criminal activity. In other words, not just necessarily selling counterfeits, but going to great lengths to conceal the fact that they're selling counterfeits. An example of that, for instance, is what we call hidden sales. And that's where somebody sets up a listing on our platform, which is for instance, just non-branded pants. And you can order 6 different types of pants, 6 different colors of pants. That's what the listing says. But in reality, what they're selling is some counterfeit product. For instance, counterfeit Gucci purses in 6 different styles. The tell for buyers in the know is on some third-party website. For instance, a chat group on Meta or a third-party website where an influencer or somebody else says, "Hey, if you want to buy counterfeit Gucci purses, go to this listing on Alibaba.com. All you're going to see is a listing for pants, but in fact, if you order a pair of red pants, you'll get this style of counterfeit Gucci purse." So that's an example of, kind of going above and beyond just selling counterfeits, actively trying to conceal it. Those are the types of sellers that, we think are not just counterfeiters, but criminals. And so that's an example of the kind of case that we might, on our own, once we've collected enough data, take straight to law enforcement. Again, it's police who make the final decision, so we can't promise that they'll take the case, but we have long and deep relationships, especially with Chinese law enforcement. And in fact, many of the offline folks who work for us are former Public Security Bureau folks, just like I work for us on the front-facing side, and I'm a former U.S. prosecutor. So these are 3 different ways that we generate cases. Next slide, please. These statistics are a little bit dated, but this just gives you a sense. I think these are from July of 2022 to June of 2023. Just how extensive our support of offline cases is. We proactively referred 168 cases to law enforcement. There were 751 arrests. In addition to that, 273 illicit facilities were closed as a result of those cases. And there was a case value, which is essentially the goods seized and stuff like that, of $159 million. Next slide, please. This is just maybe self-evident, but something we wanted to make clear. With the reorganization last year, what was formerly one offline investigation team has become two. So there is now an offline investigation team for the China-facing platforms, and there's a separate offline investigation team for the international-facing platforms. As a practical matter, what that means is that the offline team on the international side, which is brand new because all of this used to be handled by the team now serving the China-facing platforms, has had to, go through a little bit of a learning curve. But they've already managed to support several really significant cases, including one involving hidden sales, the scheme that I just described to you. And we're feeling very good about what they've achieved so far and the trajectory. Next slide, please. This is just to show you, I've talked an awful lot about Chinese law enforcement, but just to show you that increasingly, especially because of the presence on our team of people like me who have deep relationships with Western law enforcement, we're trying to work with Western law enforcement as well. The major obstacle to this, as I alluded to earlier, is that, we are constrained by law. When it comes to providing data about Chinese citizens to foreign law enforcement. And I'm not trying to single China out for that. I think you'd find the same thing with most other countries. The French government is not going to provide data about French citizens to foreign law enforcement. American companies are not going to provide data about Americans to foreign law enforcement. But what we can do is try and focus on foreign targets. So, for example, we are trying to work with foreign law enforcement on what are known as bulk buyers. And that is when somebody sources from our platform, but it's actually somebody, an American based in the US or a French person based in France or a Spaniard based in Spain. And we identify that pattern on our platform. So they're buying way more than anybody ever would for personal use. And that's one thing on a business-to-business platform like Alibaba.com, where potentially you are using them specifically because they're a wholesale platform. But when we see those kind of patterns on, for instance, a business-to-consumer platform like AliExpress, then it's something which makes us take notice. When somebody is buying 2,000 generic purses, then one wonders what that's all about, and that's the kind of thing which may raise our radar and we might take to foreign law enforcement. And these standards that you see here on the screen are some of the foreign law enforcement agencies that we're working with on a regular basis. The U.S. IPR Center based in Arlington, Virginia, actually houses 20 different U.S. federal law enforcement agencies. The City of London Police has a specialized unit called the Police IP Crime Unit, the Gendarme National in France, Guardia Civil in Spain, Guardia di Finanza in Italy, Czech Customs, and of course Europol, and I just came from the Interpol conference. So because we're headquartered in China, our deepest contacts are with law enforcement there. We're certainly willing to work with foreign law enforcement and usually can provide the necessary data provided the target is not a Chinese national. Next slide, please. Final pillar, as we're wrapping up here, is what we call stakeholder collaboration. As I said, anybody, including most of you, if you're IP owners, knows that the only way we're going to have any chance in this fight, because there are so many counterfeiters and they're constantly coming up with new ways to cheat us, is to work together. So that's exactly what we do. We work first and foremost with rights holders. We also work with the industry associations that represent them. And we also work with government, both with administrative agencies like the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and also with law enforcement agencies like some of the ones that I just showed you. Next slide, please. This is a picture of my team, and I always like showing it, even though some of these photos are a little amateurish and it's kind of a running joke. The picture of Graham, who's based in the UK for us, up there at top is probably a 40-year-old picture back when he still had black hair. But the reason I like this slide is because I think it looks so human. At the end of the day, it shows you that our front-facing team is a collection of real people, and that's exactly how we deal with you. All of us will provide you with direct phone numbers, with direct email addresses. And as I said at the beginning of this, if there's one promise I make and one thing I want you to take away from this presentation, it's that you can reach me and I will respond. You can get a human being on the phone, and most of us, well, all of us, in one way or another, have deep experience in IP, the ability, I think, to understand whatever problem that you're describing to us. And while most of the time I think it's something we can fix, we're also going to be straight with you. And if it's just something where, the platform has made a decision that we're not going to honor certain types of claims, we'll let you know that, so that, you may not be happy about it, but at least you're going to know and you can make an informed business choice about how you want to proceed. Next slide, please. These are examples of many of the trade associations that we work with and have worked with for a long time and continue to work with. And at least two of them have now supplied us with members of my team. So my team includes the former Director General of INDICAM, which is the major IP trade association in Italy, and the former Director General of ANDIMA, which is the major IP trade association in Spain. So it just gives you a sense of the kind of experience and reach that our team has. We're intimately acquainted with IPR in all of the countries, especially all the countries where we have people based, but increasingly in the countries that we cover as well. Next slide. These are examples of some of the law enforcement conferences that we participated in. The slide's a little bit dated. You see one for the 2021 Interpol IP Crime Conference. I just came from the 2024 IP Crime Conference. So the takeaway here is that we've gone to all the conferences you see on the screen there, but we kept going on them. We kept going to them since, and especially because so many of us have deep ties with government agencies. I'm one of three people on the team who's a former U.S. federal prosecutor. We have a former veteran of Scotland Yard, a former veteran of the FBI. We're well situated to walk the walk and talk the talk of law enforcement. We have credibility because we've been there and we know and understand the constraints that they face. So we're not going to come to them with something that's going to waste their time. And that's why, for the most part, they listen to us. Next slide, please. These are examples of summits that we organized ourselves. Again, this slide is a little bit dated, but we've organized conferences in places like Rome and the UK. And in our own conferences like this, we'll not only bring in lots of businesses, but we'll also bring in, as I said before, people like academics who are looking at some of the thornier problems that you don't necessarily have time to reflect on if you're an active business owner trying to protect his or her IP. Next slide, please. I want to talk quickly about the Alibaba Anti-Counterfeiting Alliance. This is actually housed within the Taobao and Tmall group now, so it's not something that my team works on directly, but never fear, because it's worked so well over the years, bringing together rights holders and Alibaba to jointly fight counterfeiting. We're creating Alibaba Anti-Counterfeiting Alliance International. And the pilot program for that is going to be rolling out in the next few months. What we're hoping to do is take the best of the existing Alibaba Anti-Counterfeiting Alliance and apply it to rights holders who operate primarily on our international facing platforms like Alibaba.com, like AliExpress. Next slide, please. And like the existing AACA, we probably will eventually divide this into industry groups, because one of the great things about our rights holder partner, excuse me, working in in an alliance like this is that they can get together on cases. So, for example, a huge case involving counterfeit auto parts was brought by the Public Security Bureau a couple of years ago, primarily because 14 different automobile companies came together and went to the PSB with a joint referral. Again, as a former law enforcement official, I can tell you that we really only have time to work on the biggest and most significant IPR cases, at least on the criminal side. So to get the police interested, making it as big as possible is best. And the easiest way of doing that is to get together with other companies, because even though you might be competitors on the business side, when it comes to anti-counterfeiting, we all have the same enemy, counterfeiters. So it's a space where erstwhile competitors can work together to try and do stuff which will help everybody. Next slide, please. These are just examples of some of the things that the AACA is engaged in. And again, we hope Alibaba International, AACA International will be involved in as well. Regular meetings, an annual conference, creating educational materials for both consumers and sellers, and making it easy for people to communicate with us with things like a social media channel. Next slide, please. This is a first, and so far I believe only in the e-commerce industry. In 2019, we created what's called the SME, Small and Medium-Sized Enterprise Advisory Committee, or SAC. And it was a recognition that, as helpful and productive as AACA had been, for the most part, it was comprised of large international companies, because it was mostly companies who had an active presence on the ground in China. And that's not something that your average SME has. They simply can't afford it. They probably don't even have a dedicated IP person. So we created SAC to try and address the specific concerns of SMEs. And in addition to holding regular meetings of the SAC members, we also fund their participation in conferences around the world. We're bringing a bunch of them to New York City next week. And the week after that, we're bringing a bunch of them to Tampa for Shark Tank Reunion. The purpose of bringing them to conferences like this is that way they can connect with other stakeholders. Because while it's important for them to work with us, SMEs need all the help they can get in protecting their IP, especially online, where the reach can be so vast. And unlike the big companies, they're not necessarily going to be able to afford a vendor who can look over all the platforms for them. Next slide, please. This is just an example of this is just an example of one more thing that we do for small companies. It's called the Market Safe program. It is run by the International Anti-Counterfeiting Coalition. And basically, the great thing about it is that Alibaba pays for any SME for 1 year in the IACC program. And, if there's one thing I'm sure about out of everything I've talked about, it is that this is a great program, and anybody who's participated in it will tell you that the trained analysts at IACC are experts in filing notice and takedown requests for infringing listings that they find on our platform. So again, if you are an SME, you can sign up for this for free, courtesy of Alibaba.com, the Alibaba Group, and I would encourage you to do so. Next slide, please. And this, as I said, is perhaps the most important slide, because this has my email address. We normally don't distribute our slide decks, but you're more than welcome to take a screen print of this one. And as I said, please do feel free to follow up with me. I know that I've gone through an awful lot of material and I've spoken fairly quickly, but I wanted to get through as much as I could in the brief time that we have together. Also, I apologize. Normally, I would be happy to stick around for however long after this presentation, but as I said, I'm in Dubai and I actually have to leave at midnight sharp to catch an Uber to the airport. So thank you so much for your time and attention virtually, and I hope that I'll hear from some of you by email and maybe even be lucky enough to meet some of you in person. Good night.
Great. Thank you so much, Evan, for giving us this brief talk about IP and just letting us know that selling on Alibaba.com is pretty safe for everyone that is currently selling. If you ever encounter any issues, make sure that you can email Evan and he will take care of any situation. And also for people that are thinking of joining Alibaba.com as a seller, know that this is a platform that you can trust. Well, thanks, Evan, for joining us today for this episode of Brand Armor Mastering IP Protection on Alibaba.com. That will be all for today. And I just want to give you a reminder to everyone in our audience to follow us on our social media channels, Alibaba.com USA Sellers. We have a Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram. So make sure to follow us so you can stay up to date of everything that's happening in the B2B industry, specifically on Alibaba.com side, on the seller side. And I also want to invite everyone to check out our website, us.alibaba.com. We share really important information regarding the B2B industry, as well like industry reports that can help you and your business. So yeah, just follow us, check out our website, and you can stay up to date on our upcoming events. And well, thank you so much, Evan, for joining us today for this episode. I'm sure all that information was really helpful to all our current sellers and also our potential new sellers. Thank you so much, everyone. I'll see you next time.